Hey everyone, Saeed here, Psychology of Spirituality. I'm creating this video from my private clinic practicum, which I talked about more in this video. Sometimes you have clients who cancel. That happens often when you work in a private clinic, so you have more downtime as opposed to working in a school, which I talked about in this video, or working at a detention center, which I talked about in this video also. My website, psychexpert.com, I have links to all these resources along with other therapy worksheets, information on different therapeutic psychological models, orientations. Check that out in the description. I saw this image on the Economist YouTube page. You see some of these blog comments and things like that, as well as every month I attend the Duke University webinar, Religion, Spirituality, and Health webinar, which you all can sign up for also. I'm putting the link in the description. They meet on the last Tuesday of every month, and they have a varied, interesting array of speakers, such as Dr. Rosamond, who spoke 2 days ago, who is the Director of Clinical Care at McLean Hospital, as well as an adjunct professor at Harvard University, and his SPIRIT initiative, SPIRIT being an acronym. And I'm linking more information about that right here because it's very groundbreaking, because it's one of the only evidence-based spiritual psychotherapy interventions for psychiatric patients. As he was talking about the research, he gave a 1-hour presentation. He mentioned this interesting statistic which relates to the topic at hand, this Deaths of Despair article, and this idea in the social sciences on how secularization and a shift away from religion is leading to higher deaths of despair. That is, deaths by suicide, alcohol, drug overdoses, and alcohol poisoning and things like that, not just health-related complications. He said that the National Institute of Health, which is the main funding body for research initiatives, has over $4 billion allocated for a variety of research grants, such as substance abuse, palliative care, well-being initiatives, school initiatives to help with student retention rates, things like that. And I'm showing the link right here, which you can use. I spent a few minutes yesterday going through some of the research projects, past and present projects. There are over 200,000 projects that the National Institute of Health is currently funding, and less than 20 have spirituality anywhere in the abstract, and only one has spirituality explicitly in the title. Of course, meaning that if they're not going to fund anything related to spirituality, there's zero related to religiosity, that bridge of mental health, healthcare, and religiosity. Mainstream science, by and large, does not see the legitimacy of or empirical credibility of building research, intervention, interdisciplinary collaboration at an individual, systems, social, legal level with those concepts in mind. God is truly dead in some sense. Pretty much religion, faith, spirituality, these are personal components left to individuals and communities to sort out, which is paradoxical, as you would think our healthcare agencies would be attuned to healing people, not simply treating surface level symptoms. Let's use 3 comprehensive articles to debunk this point and illustrate how and why scientific institutions, think tanks, and funding bodies, as well as ourselves, that individual change is critical. It's the work that I do in a clinic. Families and individuals come here and talk to me. We need to invest and take seriously this problem of existential, social, mental suffering, and the antidote of spiritual renewal, religious renewal for some people. For some people, it's just spiritual renewal. Our first article was compiled by economists from Wesley College, Ohio State University, and the University of Notre Dame, analyzing data on mortality rates from the CDC's multiple causes of death files from 1969 to 2016, along with data on religious involvement from the U.S. General Social Survey, which is conducted biannually since 1973. Deaths of despair were defined as deaths from non-drug suicides, liver cirrhosis, and drug poisonings. As we can see from the figures in this article, and I'm linking that in the description below, drastic decline in affiliated religiosity, which we know of. The peer-reviewed research has pile that on, at least in Western nations. And religious attendance by most demographic groups has decreased, but especially by non-educated white males. We see the largest deaths of despair in this group, and they are also the most vulnerable to this drastic social change, as financial instability causes a host of other spiraling negative trends, such as substance abuse, necessitating some support and structure. Such conditions are further compounded by weakened social support structures, the declining rates of marriage, child rearing, and religious service attendance, and lack of strong social safety nets, such as limited worker retaining programs, unequal access to health care. The authors also examined a policy-based shock to religiosity that came immediately before a decline in religious practice in the U.S. Blue laws, as they're called, regulate commerce at certain times of the week, often Sunday mornings. You see that with Chick-fil-A, for example, Chick-fil-A being closed on Sundays, and are strongly related to religious practice, affecting the incentive to attend religious services. After a Supreme Court decision provided a test by which these laws could be found unconstitutional, many blue laws were repealed, thereby affecting religious practices. As it states in the article, the relative comparison of states across the scatter plot suggests a negative trend. States that had larger drops in religious attendance had larger increases in deaths of despair. In many states, blue law repeals preceded declines in religiosity, and our work suggests that these repeals lowered religious participation. We can make comparisons here because, as I always talk about in this channel, there are other parts of the world which still have a metaphysical, religious, spiritual basis for society. In Islamic countries, for example, in Pakistan, religion is the nucleus. The framework of reality is still based on the active role of faith, for good and for bad. There's no shortage of information on corrupted religious hierarchy and institutions coercing the whims of the populace by inciting their religious sentiments. We know the dark side of religion, spirituality, which I talked about in this 5-part video series. But as we can see from these videos which I'm showing, supplied from my wife who lives in Karachi, Pakistan, it's normal for entire days of commerce, or at least certain times of the day, such as during Ramadan, for stores and businesses to close for religious community gatherings and practices. We know that this is good for human beings. Scientifically, theologically, we cannot survive at only a hustle and bustle, materialistic, constant pursuit of more and more level. If that's all that life is, then the science speaks for itself. More and more human beings will kill themselves to escape this facade. And there's this great movie, other movies such as I'm Not at Home in This World Anymore with Elijah Wood, even the show Severance, the film Secret Life of Walter Mitty, other films which I've talked about on this channel, which have these archetypal themes. Individuals stuck in this facade of keeping up with the Joneses, as we call it, who find some way to break free, either mentally or externally, into the wild, which I've talked about all the time on this channel. But again, even in most of these movies, the onus is always on the individual. The system itself won't change. I need to really cement this because non-Western societies are and will increasingly become westernized, which also constitutes becoming more secularized, which is great on some accounts. More equality, technology, progressivism, health equity, job opportunities. But the dangers and shortcomings are never ever discussed. It's always a one-way dialogue on how third world countries, developing countries, need to get with the times. But what about what the West has lost? Let's look at even more research to critically cement this deaths of despair, human beings killing themselves because of their lack of religious spiritual orientation.
You still meditate like your guru in India, did you?
Yes.
You happy now with God? Sometimes to lose balance for love is part of living balanced life.